Good morning, children, and welcome back to the digital classroom of Vikram Juneja. In my previous video, I dealt with the line by line explanation of the first half of the story, Chief Seattle's speech. In today's video, I am going to deal with the second half of the same story. I shall deal with the line by line explanation of the second half from page number 44, third paragraph. Just a quick recap of what we have done. As you all know, Chief Seattle's speech is very significant from the point of view of the fact that it was a strong plea made by Chief Seattle to the offer which was made by the Chief of White, at that point in time. This particular speech was given as a response to that offer, where the American chief, the great white chief, wanted to take away the land of Chief Seattle from their tribe, that is their Suquamish tribe and Duwamish tribe. Chief Seattle was given an offer in lieu of that particular land, that their territories will be protected by the armies of the white chief. Now, Chief Seattle, who loved his land like other red Americans, he has come up with a reaction, a response, a retaliation in the form of this speech. So we continue from page number 44, where he is kind of differentiating between the people of whites and the people of red Americans. So he talks about the dead people of the white Americans. He says, "Your dead cease to love you and the land of their nativity as soon as they pass the portals of the tomb and wander away beyond the stars." So he says your dead also stop coming back to you. They cease to love you. They do not love you. They do not come back to their land of nativity when they have passed the portals. Now, the portals of the tomb refer to the large gates of the tomb. When they have gone into the other world, they do not come back to your world once again. They wander away beyond the stars and they never come back to you. Our dead never forget, and then he says they are soon forgotten and never return. Our dead never forget this beautiful world and that gave them being. They still love its verdant valleys, its murmuring rivers, its magnificent mountain and sequestered vales and verdant lined lakes and bays, and ever yearn in tender fond affection over the lonely hearted living, and often return from the happy hunting ground to visit, guide, console and comfort them. So basically he says that the dead people of the white, they are forgotten, they never return. But as far as the dead of the red Americans are concerned, they never forget their beautiful world that gave them the life they lived, they enjoyed. They still love the grass-filled valleys. They still love the murmuring rivers, the rivers making low noises. They still love the grass covered lanes of on the sides of the rivers or the lakes. And they still love their bays. They still love in tender affection. They showcase their affection over the lonely hearted men who are alive. Their men who are alive. They come back to their lonely hearted men. And they return from their happy hunting grounds. Now, these happy hunting grounds is the paradise of American Indians, to which the souls of the warriors pass after death. But they come back from their happy hunting grounds. They come back to visit them, to guide the people who are alive, their people who are alive, to console their people who are alive, and to give a bit of comfort to them. Then he says, day and night cannot dwell together. Of course, day and night, they do not come together. So what he's trying to actually make out from this particular statement is that, like day and night, they do not fall together. Similarly, the red Americans and the whites, they cannot be together. The red man has ever fled the approach of the white man as the morning mist flees before the morning sun. So he says, like the morning mist, it appears early in the morning and it goes away, it vanishes after the sun appears on the horizon. So he says, similarly, the red man actually has fled away the approach of the white man long time back, and of course we do not follow each other at any point in time. But then he says, however, your proposition seems fair, and I think that my people will accept it and will retire to the reservation you offer them. So he says, but then the proposition which has been made by the white chief, the great white chief at Washington, is quite fair. The proposition which he had made was he wanted to take away the land of the red Americans, and in lieu of that, he wanted to give them protection. He said that my warriors are going to give you the protection. So he says, then of course we will accept that proposition. Then we will dwell apart in peace, for the words of the great white chief seem to be the words of nature, speaking to my people out of dense darkness. So he says that we are going to dwell at that point in time, but then we'll dwell apart. We will still not be able to live together with the white people. And the words of the white chief seem to be the words of nature which have been echoing to us, okay, from the dark valleys, from the darkness, from the dense darkness, because he believes that the doom of the red Americans is near. He believes that the doom is near, and ultimately he is going to their tribe is going to vanish. So this is basically what he is trying to explain in this paragraph. Then Chief Seattle says, it matters little where we pass the remnant of our days. There will not be many. The Indian's night promises to be dark. Not a single star of hope hovers above his horizon. So what he's trying to say is that it matters little. It doesn't matter at all where we are going to spend the remaining of our days. And he believes that there won't be many days to come. Ultimately, the doom is near. The red Indians are going to ultimately vanish. The Indian night promises to be dark. That's what he says. And he says there is no hope over the horizon which we can look up to and live. Sad voiced winds moan in the distance. Grim fate seems to be on the red man's trail. And wherever he will hear the approaching footsteps of his fell destroyer and prepare stolidly to meet his doom, as does the wounded doe that hears the approaching footsteps of the hunter. Now, what the red man is trying to say, Chief Seattle is trying to say, that sad voiced winds actually are mourning in the distance, and there is sadness all around. Grim fate, the grim fate is going to actually meet us ultimate. The gloomy fate is going to meet us, the red man. He will actually hear once the approaching footsteps of the destroyer who is ultimately going to take away the tribe from this earth. As such, he says that, like we are hearing, he's making a comparison between the red man vanishing to a doe who is on the verge of death, hearing the approaching footsteps of the hunter. He says a few more moons, a few more winters, and not one of the descendants of the mighty hosts that once moved over this broad land or lived in happy homes, protected by the Great Spirit, will remain to mourn over the graves of people once more powerful and hopeful than yours. He says we are going to live a few more moons. We are going to live a few more winters. And there won't be descendants of the mighty host that once moved over this mighty land, they will vanish, they will not remain. The people who stayed in these happy homes, protected by the great spirits, will of course be vacant. There won't be anybody to mourn the death of the Red Indians, the Red Americans. He says, but why should I mourn the untimely fate of my people? Tribe follows tribe and nation follows nation, like the waves of the sea. It is the order of nature, and regret is useless. Your time of decay may be distant, but it will surely come, for even the white man whose God walked and talked with him as friend to friend cannot be exempt from the common destiny. We may be brothers after all, we will see. He says the tribe follows tribe, means the untimely decay is going to actually take place with everybody. It has happened with us. We are going to die unnatural death. We are going to vanish from the face of this earth. But it will happen with everybody. It will happen with the white Americans as well, whose God walked and talked with him as friend to friend. They also cannot be exempted from the fate, from the destiny. And the common destiny is that whatever comes on this earth ultimately vanishes from this earth. He says we are brothers after all, and we are going to see this happen together, one after the other, maybe, if not together, but this destiny is going to be met by the others as well. Then Chief Seattle says, we will ponder over your proposition, and when we decide, we will let you know. But should we accept it? I here and now make this condition that we will not be denied the privilege without molestation of visiting any time the tombs of our ancestors, friends and children. So he says we are going to ponder, we are going to actually give a thought to your proposition, and if we are going to accept it not, we will let you know. But there is a condition to our accepting your proposition, and that for sure is that you are not going to abuse us when it comes to our visiting the tombs of our ancestors. We should be allowed to visit the tombs of our ancestors, our friends, our children at any point in time. Every part of the soul is sacred in the estimation of my people. Every hillside, every valley, every plain and groove has been hallowed by some sad or happy event in the days long vanished. He says every part of this land, every hillside, every valley, every plain, every small wood have been made holy by some sad or happy events which have been lived by the ancestors of ours in the past. Even the rocks which seem to be dumb and dead as they swelter in the sun along the silent shore thrill with memories of stirring events connected with the lives of my people, and the very dust upon which you now stand responds more lovingly to their footsteps than yours, because it is rich with the blood of our ancestors, and our bare feet are conscious of the sympathetic touch. So what he's trying to say is that even the rocks which are sweltering under the sun, which are uncomfortably hot under the sun along the silent shore, they thrill with the memories of the stirring events connected with the lives of my people. Means the lives of my people still actually can be seen on those dead rocks. Means they seem to be moving. Our dead people seem to be moving on those rocks also. Our memories seem to be attached with those rocks as well. Okay, and the very dust on which you are standing right now, my people have actually walked, and they have put their footsteps on that particular dust. It is rich. That particular dust is rich with the blood of our ancestors. And our bare feet, when we walk bare feet on that particular land or on that dust, we are conscious of the sympathetic touch of our ancestors, the touch which took place long ago on this particular land. We are able to feel that touch. Our departed braves, fond mothers, glad, happy hearted maidens, and even the little children who lived here and rejoiced here for a brief season will love these somber solitudes, and at eventide they greet shadowy returning spirits. He says, our departed brave people, our fond mothers, our glad and happy hearted young ladies, the maidens, and even the little children who have lived here, who have seen happy days over here, and who have been here for a brief season, will love these gloomy loneliness moments. Okay, and when they come back, when they greet the returning shadowy spirits of our ancestors, at that point in time they will come back, they will revisit this particular land, they will be happy to revisit this particular land, and this land will no longer remain gloomy or lonely as such. So this was with regard to the explanation here. Then Chief Seattle further says, and when the last red man shall have perished, and the memory of my tribe shall have become a myth among the white men, these shores will swarm with the invisible dead of my tribe. And when your children's children think themselves alone in the field, the store, the shop, upon the highway, or in the silence of the pathless woods, they will not be alone. So he says, and my tribe shall have become, when there will be a time when my tribe will come to an end, it will vanish, it will become a myth, it won't stay a reality among the people who are alive, among your people who are alive. At that point in time, on these shores of the sea, will swarm, will come in huge number, the invisible dead of my tribe. And when your children or children's children, they think that they are lonely, your children's children, when they are in the field, the store, the shop, upon the highway, and they are feeling lonely upon the pathless woods, they will not be alone. They will be visited by my ancestors. At night, when the streets of your cities and villages are silent and you think them deserted, they will throng with the returning hosts that once filled them and still love this beautiful land. The white man will never be alone. So like you people have actually left us alone, you people have debarred us, we are not going to debar you. We are not going to behave in the same manner. Our ancestors will come. Our ancestors are going to come to give comfort to your children's children when they are alone. When they are left all alone, at that point in time, our ancestors will come echoing with that particular place. This place will actually echo with the spirits of our ancestors, and they are going to come, and your children's children will never feel the solitude, will not feel the dumb silence on this earth, because our ancestors will be there to support them, to stand by them, to give them comfort. White man will never be alone. Let him be just and deal kindly with my people, for the dead are not powerless. Dead, did I say? There is no death, only a change of worlds. So let chief of the white men, the chief of Washington, be just in his behavior. When it comes to his grabbing the land from us, he's supposed to give us our due to live on this earth respectfully. He should not be unjust to us. He should deal kindly with my people. That's what Chief Seattle demands. He says, dead are not powerless. Dead, actually, if they can comfort us, they can provide you discomfort also. So there's a kind of a threat which he is imposing on the white people in case they are unjust to the red Americans. He believes that the dead people have the power to take the revenge from the white people if they behave unjustly with the red Americans, the living red Americans. So he believes that there is no death. This is very, very important. He believes that there is no death. He says that there's only the change of worlds. These people, these dead people, still come back onto this earth, and they have the power to take revenge in case there is anything unjust going on. So children, this was with regard to the explanation, the line by line explanation of the story Chief Seattle Speech. In my next video, I'm going to deal with the theme, the title justification, and the characterization in the story. Till then, goodbye, take care, God bless you all.